Hello, I'm Jared McNett, a political reporter for the Sioux City Journal and frequent guest on the On Iowa Politics podcast. I'm here today to chat with Democratic State Rep Steve-Hansen, who is running for re-election in Iowa House District 2. Hello, Steve.
Good morning, as it is.
I think maybe the easiest way to start is to just get a little background about you for folks who might not know you. How old are you? What sort of work do you do outside of the legislature, and where do you live?
Right. Well, I'm 67.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've lived in Siouxland my entire life. Born in the old St. Vincent's Hospital, and that's not here anymore in Sioux City. Grew up, graduated from Anthony High School, and then came up to college. Attended Briar Cliff, and then graduated from Morningside undergraduate, and then also graduated from University of South Dakota Vermillion graduate degree. So last 21 years, I've been the director of the Sioux City Public Museum. That's been quite the great voyage. We got the new facility built downtown. And prior to that, I did serve in the Iowa legislature for 16 years, 8 in the House and 8 in the Senate. Left the legislature to take over the museum job. So, in a nutshell, I've been involved in a lot of community activities, and um, so it's and then the last 2 years been in the Iowa House.
And what made you want to run again the last go around and go back to working in the legislature?
Yeah, at least the last 4 years, but um, just watching the trajectory of Iowa, the things we had accomplished in my prior tenure in the legislature, as far as maintain Iowa status as #1 in the nation in education, passing a major historic REAP legislation for groundwater environmental progression that we made, and that's been backsliding. And so, watching the national news is like, well, you can sit on the couch and complain like everybody else, or you can jump back in and try to do something about it. So that was the main thrust. Is just, I still think that public service is worthy and that you can accomplish things by being engaged. And so that's what I've been doing the last 2 years, and want to give it one more shot.
Hmm. And at this point, I was trying to do the quick math in my head, but I didn't want to get it wrong. How many terms then have you served in the Iowa legislature, including this most recent one?
Well, as I said previously, 8 years in the House, so that'd be 4 terms, and then 2 terms or 8 years in the Senate, and then now the last 2 years in the House. So a total of almost 18.
Gotcha. And in all those years, either in the past or more recently, what is some of the legislation that you're proudest of working on?
Yeah, I think, looking back, certainly the historic groundwater legislation that we did, call it the REAP Act, the Resource Enhancement and Protection. And then one of the things, as far as the community, this community of Sioux City, business leaders, other leaders came and wanted the local option tax option. And we had to pass enabling legislation at the state level, which we did. Sioux City truly was the prime pusher of that. And then, of course, Sioux City, the people of Sioux City overwhelmingly voted for a local option tax to build new schools. And when you look at one act that had the longest impact, that would be it. I mean, when you look now, since that time in the last 20 years, how many new schools have been built in Sioux City, the elementary schools, replacing some really outdated schools. Just went by Hunt School a little while ago, and I mean, every time I go by that Hunt School, I smile because just a major upgrade. And so I think that those two pieces had the longest ranging. This last 2 years, certainly the historic tax cuts. It sounds a little dramatic, but they are historic as far as eliminating the tax on pensions and retirement income, coupled with no estate tax. All my career, I've been hearing about what can we do to be more competitive with South Dakota? What can we do to be more competitive with those states that don't have income tax? This is a huge jump for us. It should make us competitive. We probably all know somebody that's moved over to South Dakota after they've retired to enhance their retirement incomes. So I think it's a game changer for us. Was the overall tax package the best one? Probably not. You can always nitpick. There's some things I wouldn't have gone with, but but you compromise, and I think it really helps people in this part of the state. And I really do believe it'll keep people here in Siouxland. I mean, I've always said it's a great place to work in and to retire in.
And then if you were to be reelected in November, what issues would you want to make your top priorities in the next legislative year?
Well, one other piece of that tax package, it was 2 years ago, we shifted mental health funding, shifted mental health funding from the county level and property taxes over to the state. That's significant. It really is. But now what we have to do as legislators and the general public is make sure the legislature and the governor keeps their promise on that and their commitment to mental health. A lot of lip service is paid to mental health, but we need to do more than lip service. We have to provide the resources. So that was a good step. We have to keep doing that. I mean, encouraging thing, more and more people are realizing mental health is not just a singular problem, but it's statewide, it's nationwide, and we're taking some good steps. So mental health is certainly a concern of mine. Ironically, it was when I first ran over 20 years ago. Then, of course, our public school system, making sure we have the adequate resources. With Sioux City, we've invested heavily in the infrastructure. Now it's time to invest and continue to invest in the students, and also make sure we give the teachers the resources they need to implement their plans and to get our kids the quality education they deserve. And then waterways, we're increasingly seeing beaches closed, whether it's lakes or ponds in Iowa. Bacteria levels have been going up. We've had more boil alerts this last summer, than most people can remember. We have to be cognizant that our waterways are getting polluted, and our drinking water, especially like for Sioux City, we rely on from a couple of different sources, but we have to protect that. And we see areas, you look what happened elsewhere over the summer in other states, what happens when your water system gets polluted. And so we need to take more steps on that. And then to go back on healthcare, making it more affordable, more accessible across the state. And once again, including mental health care. Like I said, it's encouraging to see more people talk about it. Now we need to do something. Iowa is the lowest beds per capita, public beds per capita of mental health than any other state in the nation. And that's just not acceptable.
And now this is for folks who might not know, you've actually run before against the challenger in this race. And so you've probably gotten a version of this question before, but I'll go ahead and ask it. What do you believe sets you apart from your challenger, Mr. Henderson?
I think we have several philosophical differences. And I think people understand that. I mean, as you said, he has run before. And I think people understand his views and they reject those views. But certainly on one of the biggest differences, I think, are the issue of reproductive rights. As I understand, my opponent Bob's against abortion, period, with no exceptions. And then there's a whole deal as far as limiting even at any reproductive freedom at all. That's troubling. I think plain and simple, it should be the women's right to control her reproductive choice. Don't need a retired math teacher to be involved with that. Don't need the next door neighbor. It should be the woman's right. And, it's not for me to determine my neighbor's choice. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that's going to come up, and it's going to be key in this next session, because the governor has made it front and center, is the issue of private vouchers and taking tax dollars to pay for kids going to private schools. and not just private schools, because it's taken the next step. If you look at the Arizona model, it's not just paying for private school tuition, but paying for charter schools, incenting parents to keep their kids at home, and maybe possibly paying it the way the bill's written right now, $5,500 per student that would stay at home, and or even taking it the next step, paying for Iowa kids to leave the state and attending academies or something out of state, and having our tax dollars follow those students. I just don't think that's right. We're at a time where we've underfunded public education, K through 12 and the regions, for several years now, and it's starting to show. That's one reason test scores aren't as high as they are. So we need to focus on funding private schools to the extent that we do right now, but we really need to focus on funding public education. We should not be defunding public education at this time. Currently, we spend over $100 million of state money to support private schools. So it's a critical issue. The governor got involved with primaries this year. That was unprecedented. And Bob has indicated that he's on board with the governor.
Yeah, I was actually curious to ask you about that, since you have been in the legislature for a number of years. What did you kind of make of seeing even some Republican colleagues who went against the voucher plan being primaried? You mentioned that being unprecedented. I'm wondering if you could drill down on that a little more.
Well, as from a Democrat standpoint, if Governor Vilsack or Governor Culver would have involved themselves in primaries like that, we would have had an incredible mutiny. And I know some of my Republican colleagues are certainly disappointed with the governor, but take Representative Bush up in the Cherokee Cleghorn area. He's a very conservative legislator. He was probably with the governor 99% of the time. So to separate on one issue truly was surprising. And like I said, it is unprecedented. And it's really, when you get down, winnow it all out, this issue is being driven by out-of-state interests. Arizona, Texas charter school movement. And I just find it odd when you have a state that's been so committed to public education and quality education. Our public schools are not broken. We have a great school system here in Sioux City. But if there's a problem, you don't fix it by defunding it. Last 10 years, 130 some rural schools have closed. And underneath the governor's plan, the vast majority of the school districts out there, the counties, don't have private school options. So what you're doing is you're focusing on about 2% of the K-12 population and want to funnel a significant amount of money to a very small percentage of students. So there's other ways of doing that currently, and I supported a tax credit that goes to school scholarship funds. So if you donate, I'll take for example, if you donate to the Healing Scholarship Fund, you're eligible for a 75% tax credit, not a deduction, but state tax credit. And then you also are still eligible for federal incentives too. So take $1,000 donation. I donate $1,000 to that scholarship fund. At the most, it costs me $250 after I get my tax credit back. That's pretty significant. And we've raised the cap on that fund. I've supported that. So there are other ways to achieve the governor's goal other than taking the money from public schools.
And then kind of winding down here, putting a button on everything. Ultimately, why do you think folks should go with you in November?
Well, I think I do have a record, and I easily will stand on that record, whether it's voting to expand mental health, tax cuts, clean water, working for the environment. More importantly, I've always worked for the people of Sioux City, always been an independent voice. It's got me in trouble sometimes within my own party because I have not voted along party line. And certainly has irritated my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans, because certainly I have not gone all the time with their agenda. So I've gone with what I thought is right for Siouxland. And so if you want an independent voice, I'm that person. If you want a yes person for the governor or a yes person for special interests, I'm not that person, never have been, and never will be.
Okay, Steve Hansen, thank you for your time.
Well, you bet. Thank you for the opportunity.